Hello and welcome to Ethical Principles in Using Data. I hope you're all enjoying this course thus far, and I want to remind you that if you have any struggles or any questions that are coming up, that you're welcome to reach out to your trainers at any point. So as we consider how to create a unit culture by focusing on strategies to create or enhance, improve practice and performance, it's also important that we spend some time reflecting on ethical principles in using data. So we're now going to take some time to explore this together. The purpose of this section is to raise your awareness of ethical principles in data usage and to also connect this to your practice in child welfare. So although the culture of child welfare is quite different than that of the corporate world, the child welfare supervisor's responsibilities are somewhat comparable in some ways to those of a business manager. In the business world, profit is the final outcome sought. Businesses measure all kinds of processes and productivity. The job of the manager is to evaluate those variables and to create a profit. Would you be a successful business owner if you sold goods at a low cost but lost money every month? Likewise, would you be a successful child welfare supervisor if your unit was able to get all of your case plans completed on time but had no children who achieved permanency in the last year? So while outcomes are the center of performance, there are ethical principles that also help us guide how data is used. As we dive into data, we definitely want to take note of some of the guidance that has already been issued to us. So in 2013, the Association of Social Work Boards Board of Directors appointed an international task force to develop model regulatory standards for technology and social work practice. While much of the specific guidelines related to technology and social work practice are centered around direct client practice, there is language that states, when communicating with public using websites, blogs, social media, or other forms of electronic communication, practitioners should take reasonable steps to ensure the accuracy and the validity of the information they disseminate. Additionally, the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families, specifically the Division on Safety and Permanence, provides direction around ethical use of EWIS-ACWIS with the reporting of EWIS-ACWIS suspected misuse memo, which was released in June of 2019. You can refer to this memo in your training materials. It's labeled as Handout Reporting EWIS-ACWIS Suspected Misuse Memo. This memo defines the misuse of EWIS-ACWIS system as accessing, reviewing, creating, altering, sharing, or deleting any record or part of a record within a system that DCF provides access to without a valid work reason. The memo further indicates that suspected misuse should be reported immediately upon discovery without waiting for an internal investigation. While both sources, the Social Work Code of Ethics, as well as the DCF memo regarding EWIS-ACWIS usage, provides us direction and guidance regarding the ethical use of data, we looked even further to identify ethical principles or guidelines to guide our practice around the use of data in child welfare supervision. The Results-Oriented Management Project, or the ROM, at the University of Kansas School of Social Welfare developed ethical principles and good practice guidelines in the use of data in child welfare. So let's take a look at this further together. So the University of Kansas has developed 4 guidelines for us to consider. You can find this resource in your course materials. It will be labeled Ethical Principles and Guidelines. So the first consideration is the hard and fast rule. Nobody should ever make an important case decision that's contrary to the best interests of a child in order to obtain a positive outcome score. Outcome measures are not perfect, but they're designed to promote good practice, not detract from it. So an example of this could be rushing to return a child home prematurely without fully considering safety and the best interests of that child. We need to always keep in mind the individuals and best interests of each child and family first. Second, performance, not compliance. So remember that no outcome or service response measure has a standard of 100%. Standards are set at a level that assumes and accepts exceptions. Treating outcome measures like rules rather than desired outcomes is not good practice. Our next consideration is the NASW Code of Ethics. Making decisions contrary to the best interests of the child in order to achieve certain outcomes may be a violation of our professional ethics. So one of the ethical principles of social work is to put service to others above self-interest. Whether you're a licensed social worker or not, we can all agree that this is a consideration that makes sense in our use of data, and we would want to align our practice with this. So the last consideration is the balance of measures. Any one measure standing alone can create an incentive to make decisions that are not aligned with the child's best interests. For example, the outcome measure, children are reunified within less than 12 months. This includes an incentive to move kids home. This may also result in overlooking potential safety concerns. Another example, the outcome measure, no recurrence of maltreatment. This could provide incentives to remove children from their homes or keep them in the system longer. There's also concern that we might be overly cautious as well, wanting to avoid reoccurrence of maltreatment or reentry as well. So we always want to use our professional judgment, safety criteria, rather than a motivation to reach a certain outcome as our guiding North Star. So when considering ethics and the use of data, the emphasis naturally tends to be on the side of risk and protection, but we must also bear in mind the balance between risk and benefit. Data is abundant because it's so useful. This means that many different entities may have competing interests in relation to the data. Excuse me. Because the guidance we receive is not always clear, we need to work to align our ethics, the law, and any other policies that might affect the sharing of our data. So we often use data to tell stories, make sense of the world, and this means telling stories about people and how they live. So data has that appealing veneer of scientific objectivity, but the process of telling stories is never ethically neutral. So we also use data to support increased spending, change practice, etc. Our charge is to use data in the supervision of child welfare with attention to both the risks and the benefits. Our starting point should be to ask, where is the human in the data? Why would this data use what would this data use look like from the data subject's perspective? So you're going to have an opportunity to test your knowledge now in the quiz within this section.